In this video we are going to create the above shown volumetric sphere. We already added a new icosphere on layer 2 of our previous blend file from the last video. This volumetric sphere will be slightly more complex than the previous one. We also added the default diffuse shader. We can go and delete the diffuse shader since we are not going to need it. Instead, we can add the emission shader and make the connection with the sockets as shown. Now we can add a color ramp node and put the setting on ease. We can make a little bit more space since we are going to add a lot of nodes. We can duplicate the color ramp node with the Shift D key and move it on the side. Then we can add a matte node. This node we will use a lot in this course. We can also set the matte node on multiply and connect the sockets as shown. I suggest you not to analyze too much of what is going on with all the nodes. Otherwise it gets complicated for the mind. Later you can experiment and tweak to see what everything does. We can make the socket connections as shown in the video. Now we can add a Voronoi texture node and add it behind the left color ramp node. Then we can add the gradient node, which is one of the most important nodes throughout the course, since it will give our volumetric sphere this round fading effect. Then we can add our mapping node and place it behind the gradient texture node. We can also duplicate the mapping node with Shift D and place it a little further. Then we can also add the texture coordinate node, which is, as you know or not yet know, one of the more important nodes. We can also connect the object socket to the mapping node. We can also connect the texture coordinate node's object socket to the second mapping node, as well as connect the other placed node's socket as well as shown. We can also put the gradient texture node on quadratic sphere instead of linear. After connecting the Voronoi texture to the color ramp node, we can see a change in the preview render. Voronoi in combination with the gradient node creates this effect. Then we can add the last two nodes, which are the noise and brick texture nodes. It actually does not seem logical to use these nodes, but somehow after a lot of experimentation, it seemed I needed these textures to create the desired effect. Throughout this course, you may probably not understand why certain nodes are used in certain places. Don't worry, neither do I, because I got there by weeks of experimentation with the nodes to create the cool stuff, and after creating it, I had no idea how I got there. After connecting the nodes as shown, you will see in the preview render some cool effects. Actually the first time I see this effect. Whenever you come across something cool during your experimentation, please save a separate instance of your blend file. So when you discover something cool to experiment with, save your blend file with a different name so you can experiment with it later by playing with the nodes and its settings. However, in this course I am going to show you how to create fixed projects, so the experimentation part will be your own home assignment. Now you can change the settings in the nodes as I am showing you in the video. For the last important socket connection, we are going to connect the Voronoi texture node to the brick texture node, after which you can see the change in the viewport. After changing the scale of the Voronoi texture, it seems as if the sphere disappeared, but this is not the case. We can slide the color ramp handle slightly more to the left and increase the multiply value of the matte node by a lot. Et voila! You can see we are getting the effect that we set out to create. Notice that even a small setting can turn the tide. If you start tweaking the scale value of the Voronoi texture node, you will see that you can make the sphere increase and decrease in size. You can also animate this value to make the sphere grow. You can create another window as shown and set it to the timeline editor. We can decrease the value so that the sphere is not visible anymore. Then we can press the I key with the cursor on the scale value to create a keyframe. We can create another keyframe with a higher scale value on frame 50. Now, if you play the animation, you will see in the preview render that the sphere appears in a growing style. If creating that animation went a bit too fast, don't worry, this is just for demonstration. We will cover the animation of the value later on a lot as well. After deleting the keyframes with the Alt-I key, we can collapse the timeline window so that we can tweak the node's values some more. By adjusting the scale values in the noise texture node, you can create some additional cool effects. By moving the values in the mapping node, like the location or rotation, you can give the blob sphere some dynamic motion. You can also animate these values so that you can give your volumetric sphere an unlimited variety of different animated effects. As you can see, you can go quite crazy with the different values to create really funky stuff. Now we can make our sphere perfectly round again by setting the noise scale value to 0. Then we can also select the first layer where the sphere is still there that we created in our previous video. Now the two spheres or meshes are overlapping, which creates some artifacts. Just scale or move slightly one of them to make it go away. Here you can see how the volumetric spheres look like in combination. There is actually quite a lot of transparency in them. We can also see how the spheres look like in combination with a solid object with a normal diffuse shader. As you can see, it combines rather well and renders quite fast as well. Let's give our cube a glossy shader via the Properties panel. We can change the roughness value to make our glossy shader reflective or less reflective. These spheres could already be used in a wide variety of projects, such as a halo around a planet, an energy shield around a spaceship, or a sci-fi city. Of course, you can change the color of the spheres as well with the color ramp node. This concludes this lecture. I hope you liked it and learned something new from it. In the next lecture we are going to dive more into using procedural textures with the volumetric spheres. See you in the next video.